In Consumer Corner, we take a look at trends creating a buzz online in China. On today's show, we'll discuss the different purchasing powers of Chinese and American annual salaries. As China became the second biggest economy and entered the global market, the gap between China and the U.S. is assumed to be much smaller than before. While China is growing rapidly as a whole, the purchasing power of individual Chinese people is still very low. Data from the Chinese National Bureau of Statistics shows that the average annual salary for the urban resident in 2011 was nearly 25,000 renminbi, or only 4,000 US dollars. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average annual salary of 130 million employees is more than $40,000. Recently, an article on many Chinese websites analyzed this data. The comparative purchasing power has caught the attention of many Chinese users. The blog says the annual salary of over $40,000 could purchase more than 60 iPhone 4Ss in the U.S. A Chinese salary can't even buy 6 iPhones. A U.S. salary could buy 25,000 pounds of pork in the U.S. in just 1 year. A Chinese salary can only cover around 4,000 pounds of pork. For the fashion-oriented, the average annual Chinese salary is only capable of buying 3 Louis Vuitton Neverfull handbags. That could be 48 bags for one American. As a conclusion, in this weblog, the purchasing power of the U.S. common employee's annual salary is around 10 times larger than that of China. The numbers above took the respective price per country into consideration. Another online study shows that the gap in product prices between Chinese and U.S. markets isn't huge. Take Beijing and New York, for example. Many brand names like Coach, Levi's, Nike, and Apple are considered ordinary commercial products in New York, but they are sold at more expensive prices in Beijing. If the brand is highly recognized as a luxury good in China, then the price could be multiplied. For other commercial expenditures, such as transportation, labor, and rent, and other daily expenditures, Beijing is much lower than New York. Some products still manage to come to similar prices. An American salary can buy 10 times more pork than a Chinese salary can, but the sale price of pork is actually pretty similar. The currency exchange rate often affects similar goods. Without consideration for the exchange rate, the difference can still seem large. Engel's coefficient, which calculates the proportion of income spent on food, can also reflect Chinese purchasing power. The average food expenditure for the first time decreased to less than 40% for a family from the countryside. This index for U.S. families has stayed under 10% for years. In other words, the disposable income of the average Chinese person is much lower than that of an American. So it's no surprise that the purchasing power of Chinese consumers is much lower than that of an American. This would largely be due to the higher commercial product prices and lower salaries. Many net users discuss the comparison through their microblog accounts. Some other net users mention the huge gap between the rich and the poor in China. Many complain that it's a factor of corruption and monopolies. One wrote, quote, "The incomes of top managers in those state-owned enterprises have reached an international level. The price of monopolized commercial products is also on a global scale. The only thing unrelated to the international standard is China's common people's salary. The salary has so-called Chinese characteristics." Similarly, another comment said, quote, "The purchasing power of Chinese officials should be much higher than that of the American servants." Others think it's meaningless to display this kind of comparison. One wrote, quote, "Why should we compare ourselves to American people? They are in the country with the world's largest economy, most advanced technology, and greatest military power. With similar land scale, the country's population is only 300 million, and with a large proportion of the world's elite. We have more than 1.3 billion Chinese people, with more than 100 million illiterate. Our country is still improving. Whenever you want to complain about a low salary or a high price, then you should consider your contribution to society first." Some others talked about Chinese people's enthusiasm for luxury products, since the article mentioned that Chinese average annual salaries can only afford 3 LV handbags. One playfully wrote, "The average data of China cannot beat other countries. We can compare it with the quantity. Which country has a larger consumption of LV products than the Chinese?" People always care about differences in commercial product prices or purchasing power in different countries. Many like to make these comparisons to reflect on their real living standards.